Today we are going to talk about something very interesting, which is finding out and living your true potential. It's such an interesting topic that we can talk about this. And of course, for younger people out there, we always searching for what do you want to do in your future in your life, right? So hopefully today in our chat we can able to find out and learn more and how to improve ourselves. Even I do need to improve myself today. And I have our special guest. Let me introduce her and put her up to the stage. Here we go. And this is Miss Trang. Everyone say hello, to Miss Trang. Okay. Well, she's a mentor and she has been mentoring for women who are hungry to pivot their careers and build their dream business. And she has done many things. And she's an Australian, so she's based in Bali right now. So,
Mhm.
hello, Miss Trang. Would you like to introduce more about yourself?
Yeah, hello, Uncle Dominic. Thank you for having me on the show. I am
Thank you for
very
coming.
excited. I'm very excited to be here and to have these conversations. It always is, yeah, fun to share different ideas and hopefully have an impact while we're here. So, to answer your question, to introduce myself,
Mm,
I love this because every time I introduce myself, I, I share something different because there are so many different parts of me. But to start off with, as introduced, my name is Trang Nova, and I am a mentor and speaker for those who want to pivot and build their dream businesses so that ultimately they can fulfill their purpose and potential. And that is what I love to do. That is my mission that I see myself serving. And at the same time, there are a lot of different other parts of me as well. You know, I am a daughter, I am a friend. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm traveling and living abroad at the moment. So I am an adventurer, I'm a traveler. I like to scuba dive, like hiking. Yeah, there's a lot of different parts of me that make up Trang Nova.
well, that's a lot. I mean, how did some people just stick to one thing about themselves and they don't want to
Mm,
venture forth and too afraid to get out of their shell, right? And so, but
yeah.
you change everything right now because you have the different levels to you. You're doing different things. So what's the start to it? How did that change you? How did it make you to do all these things? I mean, if I'm comfortable, I'll just stay in my spot right now. But you're different.
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would say it started even when I was in primary school, and it's not because it actually just became it was very natural to me. There are people who might stick to one thing and maybe they don't try different things. But I remember even from primary school, I was very curious, and I saw my dad at home. In our family room, there was a keyboard that would sit in the corner of the room. And at night, my dad would just like play on this keyboard.
Uh,
And I was curious and I asked him, Dad, can you teach me how to play the keyboard? I want to learn. So then I learned how to play the keyboard, which eventually became piano. I learned how to play the piano. And then I also was curious because at school, I would see my friends playing soccer at lunchtime. And I'd never played soccer before, but then I wanted to join in and try it out and have fun. So then I started to play soccer. And I think it's a combination of just my personality. Like I'm a very curious, free-spirited, um, explorative person. And I
mhm.
like to try those different things. And then my parents, they really gave me the opportunity to do that because I'm the daughter of immigrant parents. So, I was born and raised in Australia, but my parents are from Vietnam, and my first name might give that away, Trang. So they were very committed to giving me the best life possible. They migrated to Australia for a reason, and they wanted to give me the opportunity to learn a lot of different things. So anytime I asked what that I wanted to try something new, they would let
Mhm.
me do it. So I think it was a combination of just my personality and my parents creating a very conducive environment for that.
Oh, that is interesting. Well, because it's a very different culture, and compared in Taiwan, right? Most Taiwan's parents are, how they would say, quite controllable in what they want for the kids' future. Like, I want you to grow up to be a doctor. I want you to be, and so for what you did, your parents' support, I guess it's a huge, huge impact on you. Your parents' support to change what you are right now, right?
For sure. And like that's not to say that my parents didn't have that narrative of, oh, you should grow up and you should work hard and get a stable profession, you know,
So
like a
they did.
doctor
So they did.
or
They
a
did that
lawyer.
too.
They did. They did.
Oh,
And you know
okay.
what?
Okay.
Like I am the rebel of the family
Oh
because
no.
my dad's a doctor, my
Oh.
sister is a dentist,
Oh my God.
and I'm
Wow.
here in a different country just like floating around. No, I'm not floating around, but I'm doing my own thing.
Right.
And I did actually graduate from school and I did do university, and we can maybe talk about that eventually as well. But now running my own business, doing something that's off the beaten track. Yeah, I am the rebel of the family, that's for sure.
Well, I can see you're a very successful person right now, so it must be quite a big jump or something, right? Could be. Would that be?
Mm,
Yeah.
I
Well,
appreciate that, Dominic.
yeah. Well, so it brings me to this quote here that I have is about risk, right? So this quote says, "Don't be afraid to take risks, for it is the unknown that your potential truly shines." Okay, don't be afraid to
Mm,
take risks, for it's in the unknown that your potential truly shines. So
mm,
it's this quote kind of for me means to take risks, right? There's risk there. Just don't be afraid to take them. But I'm in the sense that I'm afraid of risk. So I see risk, I think about a lot of things. And for me to actually jump ahead and change my career or change something, uh, is quite riskful. For example, there
mm,
was one time in my life where my friend asked me to drop everything that I'm doing right now and join him to go for this pilot training to be a pilot, right? It was a huge risk for me because I'm married and I have a kid at that time. Um, I wasn't sure that I'm able to unlock this potential or to do this, to jump on, because I was afraid if I did it and I fail, that means, my family will be, in ruins probably. So that kind of risk kind of stopped me from, I guess, unlocking my true potential or going forth in the end. So sometimes I still think back and what if I have taken that risk and what if I've done that? What would have happened? You know so what do you think
mm.
about this quote, Trank, and what do you think about risk?
Oh, I love this topic. So, firstly, I really do agree with this quote. You know, it is in the unknown that our potential shines.
Mhm.
And it's like, how can we not explore the unknown? This is how I see it, and I get that there are a lot of there's a lot of fears and logistical components when it comes to taking risks.
Mhm.
But even just talking about it from a theoretical level, right? You know, if we were to stop taking risks at the age of say 20 years old, if we were to stop exploring the unknown when we were 20 years old, then essentially what we are doing is that for the rest of our life, from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50, we will never have the chance to grow anymore. We'll just be like a 20-year-old for the rest of our life with our set skills, our set
Yeah.
knowledge, and you know, accomplishments that we have reached. So how I see it is that in exploring the unknown and
Mhm.
in taking calculated risks, like it doesn't have to be completely you know, unstrategic, all or nothing risks. I don't believe that that is necessarily smart either. But taking calculated risks, exploring the unknown, is how we get to step into our fullest potential. And I think a big part of this is also our sense of self. So, like I said, from a young age, I've been trying new things. I did many different sports. I did a lot of different extracurricular activities. So, from a young age, I had a certain view of myself that I am adventurous and I can try new things. And
Mhm.
I'm okay when I try new things, you know, like sure, there's a bit of a risk, but I will be okay. You know, it's never that dangerous. Like, what's the worst that could happen? So I had that view of myself, and that really helped for me to grow up and to continue down that path of changing paths, changing directions, taking risks, exploring the unknown, changing careers, starting a business, moving overseas. Like, I think that is a really big part to play. You know, how we view ourselves, our sense of identity, you could say.
Mhm.
And sure, I was blessed that I had that sense of identity from a young age. But even if you're an adult now, even if you're listening and you're, a teenager, or you're in your 20s, in your 30s, it's never too late to start to shift your sense of identity. Like if you start to do something new tomorrow, already right there is a piece of evidence, like a new puzzle piece that is going to be placed into who your identity is. It's going to start to shape how you see yourself. So I think taking risks is absolutely part of the process. But before we start to take risks, we've also got to look at how we can shift our sense of ourselves, because that's important for us to have the confidence, for us to have the belief to take those risks.
Yeah, building the confidence when you're young is kind of, I guess, kind of easy in some ways because everything there is a, how do we say? What do we say? This, there is a backup plan to a lot of things. Like if you fail, your probably your parents will support you in some ways, right?
Yes.
For example, for students in Taiwan right now, because their emphasis in their life is pretty much studying. The parents told them you need to focus on your studies, get good grades, get a good school. Eventually, that's as you go to better school, you go to better university, you get more chances of a better job. And when this happens, your potential is unlocked. So
Yes.
how does this affect them? Like you're saying in a way that they should, maybe they should have put a little stone in there, change a little bit of what they want to do, and maybe that will be better. But I
Mm.
do see some students who actually, when they do this, they actually fall out of the system. Well, I'm not saying the system is bad or good. I'm just saying they fall out and they end up, doing working at a local drink shop. I mean, low paying jobs. I mean,
Mm.
they look happy, but in the long run, I feel like there is more potential in them, and it's not there anymore because they have fallen out of the system that has been laid out for them from society in Taiwan and also from parents here. So
Yeah.
how can we change that? Or how do we improve on that? What I want to know is improving. How can students improve themselves to be better of themselves and eventually be someone like you and amazing and going around and doing different things? And so
Mm.
how can we help the students do that?
Yeah. Our environment, the culture that we're in is a huge aspect to the reality that we live. And I've never actually been to Taiwan before. I would love to go, but I can
Sure,
imagine.
someday. Bali is pretty close.
It is, right? So maybe next year.
Get on a
But
boat and
yeah.
row across the yeah.
Yeah, like so I can't like speak to Taiwan culture specifically,
Mhm.
but I can relate because, like I said, my family upbringing, my parents were open for me to try new things, but they were still very much set with the idea that you choose one profession, it's a respectable, stable profession, and you marry that profession for life. That is what you do for the rest of your life so that you can put food on the table, you can have a roof
Mhm.
over your head, you can have respect from your peers, you can have a family, and you don't have to, worry about money.
Mhm.
So I get that. I get the pressure and I get the system that has been created by the culture that we are a part of, the society's uh, imposed way of doing things, the mainstream way of doing things. Um, so I get that. And that is something that we are constantly battling with every day, because when we're part of a norm and it's part of a culture, then that is
Mhm.
our everything. But what I think that the first step is to start to think at a conscious level. That's got to be the first step.
Mhm.
Because if we don't think and question things,
Mhm.
if we don't get to know ourselves and ask ourselves questions like, what are our values?
Mhm.
What is our purpose? What do we believe? If we don't ask ourselves those questions, and we don't actually question the reality that we are a part of,
Mhm.
then we just fall into the trap of unconsciously following what everyone else does
Mhm.
around us. We just follow the crowd. We just have different beliefs, different norms, different like customs imposed onto us, and we just take it on. We don't question it. We take it on like it is a given. We think it's a given. We think it's just the way the things are, when in reality, nothing is a given.
Hmm.
We very often have a choice. And even when things feel like it's a given, the reality is we do have a choice. So I think the first step is thinking critically and asking ourselves these questions so that we can discern what is right for us, what is true to us, what we want, rather than, what everyone else is telling us what
Mhm.
they want for us.
I like that. I actually have a student that's very similar. If she's watching right now, I'm talking about you. And so what she did was, when I was teaching her back in high school time, uh, she had lots of questions, but she followed the norm. She did everything she had to. She go to school. She get good grades in the school, but she has always this thinking about things that, why is this happening in her life, and why is this happening in someone else's life. So as
Mm,
soon as she reached 18 and she went to college, university, college, right? That's when
yeah.
she had more freedom to show it. And eventually, right now, as I see her, she's a totally different person right now. She's gone the path of adventure, and then she's having fun. And at the same time, she's learning and she's helping people, helping society. So she, in some sense, has found out what she wants to do in her life. And I'm amazed by that. I was like, yes, she did it.
Mm,
But there are a lot of students who still finding their way. Of course, they're young, and young people are still finding their way, like you said, building stone upon stone, and then eventually they find out their purpose, lay out something right there. What
mm.
about for older people like me, who have established families, or established things that is in their life, and it's hard to change for some people?
Mm.
What would you say to those that has established everything and realize they're not happy with their life, but if they want to change it, it's, I don't know, a huge risk, or they have a huge anchor, they have to take it off, but it's dangerous, and at the same time it could be beneficial, but at the same
Mm.
time it could be, it ruin your family, ruin you. So what
Mm.
what would you say to that, and how does that help? What can you do to
Oof.
help these people, or improve them in some ways?
Yeah. Okay. There are a few things here. So I'd love to explore each of these things. Firstly, I'd like to share an example of actually a podcast guest that I had on my podcast. And she's so inspirational because she's 76 years old. And
That one, yes.
yes, you
Yeah,
know her?
yeah,
Yeah, you
I
listened?
listened to
I
that, yeah.
love that. Thank you, Dominic. She's 76 years old, and she's doing a podcast recording with me on Zoom
Mhm.
across the world from each other.
Right now?
Oh, no, like
Oh,
when
that
we
time.
recorded
Okay,
the
okay.
podcast. Yeah, yeah. And so already, right? Like that just shows adaptability. That shows the trait of openness to take on new concepts and the unknown, you could say. And that is just the manifestation of so many other things that she has achieved in her life, because the reason why I interviewed her was she wrote her very first book
Mhm,
at
mhm.
72 years old. And then
She's
her
amazing
second
memory.
book,
I'm like, wow.
yeah, right?
Mm.
Her first book at 72 years old, and then her second book she just published at 76 years old. So those are just a couple of examples, but she had gone through quite a few different career changes and a few identity shifts throughout her
Mm.
lifetime as well. So I really want to share that first of all, because I think she is an incredible example of showing us that it's never too late.
It's never too late. Everyone hear that, it's never too late.
It
I'm
can
40 something
feel
years old, so
right? Like it can feel like it's too late. It can feel like we've got these certain structures in our life. And, I don't have a family, so I can't speak to that specifically. But, there are going to be certain structures in our lives that we need to honor and we need to prioritize, of course, because, if we've got children, then their well being and their lives are in our hands. So I acknowledge that. At the same time, are the lines as set as we currently think they are? Like questioning once again, is it a given that we are as stuck or we are in this path as we think we are? Or is there still opportunity for some flexibility?
There we go. That's the question we should ask ourselves. Is there still possibilities? We need to
Yes.
question that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Because like let me share this with you. I have for the last decade I was in a relationship, so we weren't married but we were in a attached intimate relationship for almost
Right.
10 years. And I'm sharing this because my whole life the narrative that I thought was, you find a partner and you stay with them for the rest of your life, like you live out your life together, and it's respectable, it's honorable, it's selfless to put them, you put your relationship first and you don't do anything to jeopardize your relationship,
Mhm.
especially after 10 years. This year, the last 12 months, I've been on a journey of rethinking this narrative because I thought that this was the way. But what I've learned is it's one way, not the only way. And of course, everyone's circumstances are different. But for me, what was happening was I started to recognize that I had certain values, I had certain beliefs, and I had certain parts of myself that I needed to express and I needed to experience in my life. And they were different to what my partner wanted. So we were sure this is what I said earlier. This ties back to that
Mhm.
of getting to know ourselves really closely, asking ourselves what are our values, what are our beliefs, what are our priorities in life. What does it mean for us to live our fullest life? So I was clear on these things, and James, my ex partner, was clear on these things as well for himself.
Mhm.
And for a long time, we were walking the path together. But towards over the last 12 months, as evolving individuals, as we always are, we're always
Mhm.
changing, we started to notice that our values and our beliefs and our life path were going in different directions.
Mhm.
So I had to really question, oh my gosh, do I have to stay in this relationship and give up what I want and give up, living the truest version of myself and like settling for a micro version of myself for this relationship because that's what you're meant to do? Or is there another way? And what I've learned is, yeah, it's not easy. There are a lot of different voices. There are a lot of preordained ideas and beliefs. But because I was so clear on what was most important to me, I could make the decision to follow that. And leaving a 10-year relationship is something that I never thought I could do. I thought it was like this set structure in my life that I was tied to for the rest of my life. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to do that, right? Like, I'm not saying that you have to leave your marriage or, you abandon your family because, of course, everyone's values are different and different situations call for different things. But in this scenario, the reason why I'm sharing this is because I realized that some of these set structures that I thought were, set in stone, that I thought I was tied to for the rest of my life, I still had power to write my story.
Mhm.
Now, I still have the power to create my next chapter. I still have that power because here's the thing, we have one life that I believe. We have one life that we know of. And we think that this life has to be just one big chapter. It's one big chapter that we follow the path and we continue along this path. But who's to say during this one life, we can't have many different chapters? Many different chapters that don't necessarily follow on from each other. Like, why not live multiple lifetimes in one lifetime? Like, why not have a chapter of your life where you're working in one career and you're thriving and you're doing well as an accountant? But then maybe after 10 years of being an accountant, you want to also experience traveling and like backpacking. And now you've got enough money to do that. So why not? Why not get to experience both? Who's to say that there is meant to be a sequence of how we live our life, the right order of how we lived life? I mean, people say it. There is a narrative and a general consensus out there. But once again, questioning. is that a given or is
Mm.
that a choice? Because, yeah, like I'm doing things in the opposite way, you could say. So I graduated from university. I got a master's of physiotherapy.
Mm.
I worked for 5 years and then I stopped that and I started my business. And then I was going to get married, but now I am traveling and living abroad by myself. And I love it. And every chapter is different. Every chapter brings so much joy and value and experience that, you know, we get to take with us for the rest of our life. You know, sometimes it feels like we're starting all over again. If we start a new career, if we start a new business, if we go down a new path,
Mm.
it feels like we're starting all over again. And it feels like we waste the last chapter of our life. But is it a waste if we enjoyed that chapter of our life, if we got to live it and experience it? Of course it's not a waste because, like, you know, the only thing we have is the present moment. And if we got to live and experience all of those moments for the last chapter of our life, then that in itself was worthwhile. Not to mention all the skills and the
Mm.
knowledge and the
Mm.
experience that we get to take from one chapter to the next. Everything's transferable, 100%. But it's not a waste in that way. And another way that I see it is, okay, no matter what age we are, like if we're 20, if we're 30, if we're 40, like what's more of a waste? Like letting go of the last, 4 years of the uni degree or letting go of the last 10 years of our life, is that more of a waste than wasting the rest of our life? What's yet to come? Like that is what we need to honor and what we need to prioritize first and foremost, the rest of our days, what we have control over to write our story. So what I'm saying is we always have a choice. We have the power to write our story, but it's up to us to discern what is right and wrong for us. Because in another situation, maybe it was a better choice to stay in that relationship, to stay in that marriage, and to not do this. But every situation is different. So it's up to you to understand what your values, your beliefs, and your priorities are.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in right there. I was I liked it a lot that there's a lot of chapters and there's different ways to go about our life. I think the key point I want to catch in for our audiences out there is the moment that you decide you want to do something different, and then it's the unknown, like it's something different, you never seen it before. Maybe you have seen it in other people's life, but it's something new. Like, how brave are you, or how much courage can you bring up, or just to take that step towards that decision that you are going to make. Like, you had your 10-year relationship, 10 was it 10 years, right? 10 years
Yeah.
relationship. I'm in my 17th year marriage right now. But
Yeah.
if I were to take the next step to go to do something else, like I don't know what, but if there is a next, like for you, 10 years, after 10 years to take the next step, it's like totally unknown. And the feeling that that brings you up to that moment to do it, that is, I'm pretty sure it's the most interesting thing, that it's hard for you to explain it as well. Like, even if I had to change my life, like could do something different, it's like a
Mm.
whole different thing. When I was living in the States and I make the decision to come to Taiwan, it was like my friends were telling, why are you going to Taiwan? You can speak a single Chinese. I'm like, right. And then when I came here, and it's like, language is different, food is different. Well,
Mm.
most food is different, but it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And my mom was saying, yeah, it's not an English speaking country, come back to Australia. I'm like, so, but it's that step that makes me want to do it. And then when I had my first kid, my second kid, and my third, and then so eventually it's like, well, after the first kid, you have an idea what's going to happen. You have your second one, you have an idea too. When you hear the third one, yeah, pretty much all set in plan, set in stone, and you know
Yeah.
what's going to happen. But obviously, all three kids are different. They all have their different ideas, different personality, and then that gives you a whole new concept. And then when my oldest son became a teenager, it brings out a whole new different world. And then you're like, Oh, okay, whole different idea.
Yeah.
And when my children starts getting into their relationship, I'm like, oh no, what do I do now? Do I be the person who stopped them from, going forward? So
Mm,
all this is like new unknowns, and I guess in some ways they're exciting, but in some ways it's the decision that you have to take to make it. Um,
yeah.
as an educator in my school, I teach, right? And so I'm a teacher, and I'm actually right now a homeroom teacher to 6 wonderful kids, wonderful students. They're
Mm,
amazing every day. Every day I go there, they always, impress me with something different, something new. And sometimes I wonder how much of impact did I do to impact their lives. They don't tell me personally, so I hopefully that I had give them some impact to make some decisions in their life. But I do know that it's whatever I say to them could be a huge impact, and sometimes I'm very wary of what I said or how I lead them to eventually finding out or leaving their life. And I can say things like, oh, you should disobey your parents, oh, you should not listen to your parents, your parents said this. I can't do that. All I can do is
mm,
improve them on how they can be a better person.
mm,
At the same time, I think while I was doing that, I'm also telling myself what I can do to improve myself, improve my life. um, I remember back then there was a stage where I used to work all morning until all late nights, like work and work and work, because all I'm thinking about is getting the money, bringing the food on the table for my family. And at one point, I realized I'm trading away my life for money for my kids. And so my parents would definitely say, well, my dad would say, yes, your life is for your kids. You raise them up. That's how you need to provide for them. But at the same time, I feel like I need to, you know, be a little bit happier, right? Um, helping people is happy, helping my kids are happy, but I do need to be happier a little bit for myself. And so,
mm.
how do I find that potential in myself? How do I, get away from the norms of things? So, and it was, how do I say this? It was kind of hard. There's lots of risk there, so I'm
Yeah.
afraid of it. Um, People will say, as you get older, the risk becomes more set in stone. How do you rip the stones out? And
Yeah.
like you said, everything's not a given, everything is a choice. And then the question there is there a possibility to change, to be different? I like that. If I can keep, I think if we all can put that idea into our head that saying, is there other ways I can improve myself? Is there other ways I can change it? Instead of getting away from everything, I believe that, well, I personally believe, instead of running away from everything, there is a way to improve.
Yeah.
I would say this for a fact that my relationship with my wife sometimes is a bit stony or very rough in ages, and I do notice that she has tried to improve on this relationship, and sometimes I feel like, oh, maybe it's my fault, I'm not doing good enough, I'm not improving myself, I should try. But this is the way that I need to think to improve myself, to improve the relationship, right? And so I feel like for students out there, this is the thing, we all need to understand that we need to do our tests, we need to go to school, we need to take all these things, our parents would tell us things, and we have to listen to them. But at the same time, we need to think, what can we do to improve ourselves?
Mm,
um, One of the, well, I think I talked too much now, but there's one more thing I want to point out. My son, my oldest son, at one point of his life, we've been, paying for his piano lessons and asking him to play. And eventually he's I don't want to practice, too lazy, too much. So eventually we stopped his lessons. But
mm,
suddenly this past year, he just got back onto it. He found his love for it, and he starts, playing piano every day when I don't want him to. And now what I can do is that, please play quieter, too late in, things like that. So it's whole different narrative now. So it's kind of changed. Right? It's like the unknown thing, right? So
Yeah.
I feel like my son found his potential, and for my students, I hope they can find their potential. And if they can, as a teacher, I will try my best to support them. And but
Mm,
in the same way, I have to be wary not to give the wrong messages, right?
mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's my rant. But yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think like personal stories are so wonderful to hear. Like I think people are drawn to hear stories because it has meaning and context behind stories, and it gives people permission. Like when you see someone else doing something that you want to do, when you see them having the courage and the inspiration to do that, it just sparks that empowerment in you and gives you permission to do it yourself. So I think, yeah, sharing stories is so great. And I'm glad that you shared that.
Well, thank you. I did. There's one thing that you mentioned also in yours, that the values that of ourselves, like what is our value. So how can students or even people like of my age or anywhere still wondering what is their purpose in life and what is their values of life. Some people sometimes, depression kicks in. People say, I don't like you, I hate you, or stuff like that. It makes you feel down, and you start rethinking your values, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone had it. You had your relationship 10 years, and I'm sure sometimes maybe you question your values sometimes. So
Mm.
if the question comes, what are my values? How can I find my values? So
Yeah, this is a good one. This is something that I had to do myself and something that I help my clients with. So the best way to get clear on your values is to ask yourself, who do you look up to? This is the first step. So look at people who you look up to, maybe on social media or at work, or in any media. Like if there are people who you look up to, then firstly identify those people. So, for example, you might look up to someone who is a professor. Let's just say they're a professor at your university, and you really admire them. You really are inspired by them. So, what you can then now do is you can recognize, okay, I really look up to this person. What is it about them that I admire? And maybe it's the fact that that person displays incredible leadership. Maybe that person displays hard work ethic.
right.
Maybe that person is very considerate, very empathetic.
Mm.
So when you start to identify these traits in other people that you look up to, then you can start to recognize that you are actually projecting onto the other person what you admire for yourself. So, what I mean by that is when you look up to someone and there are traits that you admire, it is actually your own projection of the traits that you want more for yourself. So, leadership, hard work ethic, consideration, and empathy. If these are the traits that you look up to in your professor at university, then these are the values that you carry for yourself. And then now what you can do is you can check, okay, I want to value these more. So where in my life can I start to embody and to act with more leadership? Where in my life do I need to be more hardworking? Where in my life do I need to be more empathetic and considerate? And now we can start to live with more intention. We get to live in alignment to our values, and that feels really good. Because when people don't feel good about themselves, when they feel self disappointment,
Mm.
when they feel a little bit of guilt, when they feel a little bit of shame about what they do or who they are, the reason why people feel like that is because they are often acting out of alignment with their values. They have a moral compass and they know that what they should do, but they're doing something different. And that causes problems because that causes mistrust within ourselves. Like if you meet someone and they are a compulsive liar, and you know that they aren't a good person because they say something and then they do something else. And when I say good person, I like that's quite subjective. So they're not an integral person. They do something that is different to what they say. Then how can you trust them? It's the same for ourselves. If we act out of alignment to our values, then we're not going to trust ourselves. We're not going to love ourselves. We're not going to feel good about ourselves. So that is one of the ways that I recommend identifying our values is actually looking at it through other people. And then we can then have more clarity about how we need to live our lives.
Mm.
So for example, if yeah, like if you're in a path at the moment that is out of alignment with your values and you can acknowledge that and you can recognize that, then that is when it is time to make that decision to write a new chapter in your life. And sure, there's going to be some risks, there's going to be some fears. It's not going to be easy. But what's more important, I believe, what's more important than getting to the end of our life
Mhm.
and having peace and fulfillment that we lived the life that was our truest and most integral life? I like, when we get to that point in our life, if we have regret, I believe there's nothing more painful than that, because regret is something that you can't change anymore. It's too late. So now is the time to take action. Now is the time to make those moves.
I like that. I recently had a talk with my student about what they like, what their idols are, and happened to be, she told me her idol is Blackpink, and she she wants to be like a dancer and everything. I was like, well, that's great. And I told
Yeah.
her one thing, that Blackpinks are amazing because that's their job. They want to be a dancer, they want to be a singer. What you need really need to look at, like you said, what they bring in their life. Like they have their lives, they show their life, and what makes them who they are, and that's the
Mm.
important part. And eventually she understood that, and so she looked at one of the singer, what's her name, I think it was Jenny. Yes, Jenny. And she looked at her life and the way she interact with her audience and interact with her fans. It shows that, oh, it's a different kind of person than just showy on stage and singing and stuff. But the person in behind the stage, that's the key one, that's the important to help the younger students, I mean, to find out and then take that and implant it into their life and change that. And I like that.
Yeah.
There's one thing that you said, that about regrets. Oh, that is terrible. I had so much regrets before as well. I do know one thing, that regrets, like you said, it's hard to change them. But someone told me there are always going to be regrets. It's just that how we look at the regrets and how we can take it and improve our own self. I mean, the
Mm.
regrets are there. We just have to take it into as an experience. Um, Bad experience or hard experience shape us to be better, so that our younger ones, can learn from it and then know that it happens. So we need to, improve on it. And so,
Yeah.
uh, so things like that, saying, I don't want to miss my parents so much. I don't want to talk to my parents so much. But then when they go, that's when we realize it's too late. And so things like that, I often tell my students in school, you know, always say thank you to your parents when they take you to school, or when they pick you home from home, or they cook something for you. Say things like that. Say thank you. It brings a small spark of happiness into their parents' life. And you said something about mistrust, and yes, it's terrible when people say something to you and you believe them, even though they're acting like, you would say like it's a good person, but technically maybe not, right? But in this way, it's kind of make you feel like you're hurting yourself. Whenever you start mistrusting yourself, it gives you this feeling. It's terrible feeling. I have that too often, and I don't like it. And we have to change that. As for students, you have to change that as well. You're gonna have peer pressure from everyone. People telling you different things. They don't like your hair, don't like your idol, don't like the way you write, and don't like the way you talk. This is going to happen, and it does have. It has happened to me when I was younger, but because there's no one else to tell me what to do then. But at least now
Mm.
I understand it. I've grown to the stage where I know it happened. I know it happened for a reason, and there are ways that you can change yourself to be better at it. And I like the message you shared. And so yeah, that's what it is. I think
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah. So Miss Trang, just to keep our conversation into a good ending and to make it all perfect, you know,
Yeah.
what steps? How many steps would you say that people need to find in finding out their living their true potential? I mean, we talked about so many things that it can evolve us to be better. But if you were to put in set in stones in maybe 5 steps, what would you say?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'd love to share some practical steps for us to find this. I do have to preface this with the fact that it's there's no straightforward process for everyone. It's going to be different for each person. And for many of us, it's a lifelong journey. Like we are constantly evolving. As I mentioned before, we are constantly living new versions of ourselves and living different experiences of life. So we're constantly going to be evolving. So it is in some ways a lifelong journey. But if I were to boil it down to a few steps, I would say, first of all, start to think more critically, start to practice thinking and questioning and being conscious. And what that requires is it requires time and space. So we're constantly distracted from the moment we open our eyes in the morning to the moment we close our eyes at night, on our phones, reacting to different stimuli, reacting to other people's demands of our attention, reacting to what other people want us to be thinking about, then we're never going to have the time and space to think for ourselves and ask ourselves these questions. So set aside some time, morning or night, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and start asking ourselves these questions. Maybe you write it down in a journal. Maybe you just talk about it out loud. Maybe you just think about it, whatever works for you. So that's the first step. The second step is to then identify your key self-awareness components. So ask yourself your values. What is your mission in this life? Like, if you were to leave the world a better place than how you were born onto it, how are you going to do that? What is your mission? What is your purpose? What are your priorities? What's the life that you want to live? How do you want your life to look? Ask yourself these questions. And then the third step is to ask yourself, okay, now that I know this, now that I know my life wants to look like this, I now that I know I want my life to look like this, now that I know, this is what's important to me. If I were to take just one step today, if I were to just do one thing today, if I were to just do one thing this week, what is that thing that I need to do to get closer to that? And that is the bridge between just thinking about something and being inspired to bringing it into our reality, because we need to take action in order to create our life, in order to live our true potential. Otherwise, it's just all a concept. So what is the one thing that I need to start focusing on? What's the one thing I need to do this week? And then next week, ask yourself the same question. The week after, ask yourself the same question, and follow through with that thing so that you can trust yourself, so that you can respect yourself more, and then ultimately reach your potential.
I like that. Uh, for younger people out there, what she really meant was we need to build on this and create a habit of thinking that everything is gonna be we have in plan. We create a habit and then eventually we'll follow through with it. I think that's the thing for students out there as well. If we're learning the languages as studying or whatever, you need to practice taking notes, do all these things, and eventually it becomes a habit. It helps you in the long run, especially in life as well. Like I'm getting old. Well, I'm actually old. My students say I'm old, but it's not because of that only. I'm taking the step that I need to improve myself. So I don't want to leave myself like in this world, like what I'm going to change in this world too much. That's not what I want to. I just want to be a better person of myself as I get older. And because if I want to be a better person of myself, I would think that my children in the future will see this video, and they will learn that their dad is trying to improve himself, and so they will maybe one day will want to improve themselves. I mean, everyone should think your life right now is not the best there is. It could be better. There are better potentials out there. We just need to slowly build it up. I mean, there is time. We need time and space. Some people will pretty fast, but some people are like me who are quite slow, but we still take the time. It comes to the last quote that I had right here. I'm gonna say really this quote. It says, "Believe in yourself, for self-confidence is the key to unlocking your full potential." Okay, I'll say it again. Believe in yourself, for self-confidence is the key to unlocking your full potential. And I'll leave this quote with everyone, and we won't talk about it so much. But what do you think, Trank? Does this is a good quote to end this conversation today, this chat today?
Yes, 100%.
Self confidence.
Yeah. Like if I were to expand on that just a little bit, remember that we need to believe in something to even pursue it in the first place, to even get started, to pursue it, to stick with it long enough to then achieve it. If we don't believe in ourselves, we're just not going to even try. Like, why bother? If we don't believe that we can fly, we're not going to try and like run off a cliff to fly. Like, we just won't even bother, let alone stick with it long enough to then achieve that reality. It's like the very first plane,
Yeah,
someone
I'm
had
gonna
to
I'm gonna
believe.
jump on that. Yeah.
Yeah, like someone had to believe that humans could fly in some sort of engine or in some sort of um, contained structure for them to dedicate their life to building a plane. And the first plane was like this huge, like it was like a huge engine and just like a tiny little chair on top, like the first iteration of the plane was, it took so much just for a short flight. But someone had to believe it to dedicate their life to pursue it. So start with believing in yourself and looking at all the possibilities. Because if someone else out there has done it before, if someone out there is living your dream, they have a business, they're traveling, they're the CEO of a company, they're a millionaire, like whatever it is, if someone else has done it, then why not you?
That's it. Yeah, if everyone has done it, why not us, right? It's possible. Like way before when I was younger, there's no internet. Now we have all these things. We have access to so much information. We just have to make use of it, right? Find it so we can find it. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, all the viewers. Thank you, Miss Trang, for sharing her input in a lot of things. I think we had a really good conversation. So I want to
Mm.
say this and end this to everybody. Thank you for coming. If you like this chat, please subscribe, and like us and share so that we can make more just chat, more interesting topics to talk about. And if you like Miss Trang's conversation today, go into her website and I'll put up a link right there so everyone can go into the website and find out more about her and more about her podcast. She is an amazing podcast. All right. So please go and listen. I listen to it. You guys should all do too. Okay. So that's it. Thank you everyone for coming to Just Chat. I'm Uncle Dominic. Goodbye. Thank you, Miss Trang.
Thank you. Bye.